morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is session 3 of Meditation 101. Um, Welcome to all my friends around the world, warriors of peace. Let's sit in silence. Don't worry about wherever you are, what you're doing, what your position is, your posture. Let's just sit in silence for a bit. Okay. We had a little meditation retreat here in my house. My wife and I and a friend of ours who came up to teach us, who's a practitioner meditation, and he's a good teacher. And we had 3 people online, all members of my tradition, and we did some other technique. There's a lot of different types of meditation and ways of meditating, and we did some other techniques. And I mean, kind of building on what we're doing. I don't want to say advanced practices because that's really not the point, because they're just different practices. But what I noticed is the practice that we were doing was like 5 or 6 sections, and the last section was just kind of resting, in the spacious nature of mind. And that section I used exactly what we do here. So even in different methods of meditation, or maybe more advanced techniques of meditation, what we're learning here is a real building block and something that's a foundational aspect that we can keep going back to, I think, no matter how far we go in the practice or whatever tradition it is. So it just reminded me of the value of what we're doing here, and the usefulness of it. That image of the sky I kept going to, when I wanted to clear my mind. And it was interesting because yesterday we started Friday evening and we went till last night. So I'm a little stiff because I've been sitting for, I don't know, we did like maybe close to 20 hours of sitting since Friday, but not, in sections, not at once. But still was a lot. So my body's a little bit stiff. But at one point yesterday, I got emotion came up, very angry. And I'm not sure at what. Sometimes, when you start paying attention to your thoughts and your mind and your emotions, stuff comes up. And it was hard for me to, I became aware of it and used our techniques and imagined the sky and this cloud of anger almost, right? And tried to touch it, but I had trouble making it dissipate and disintegrate. So what I did was said, okay, it's there. I'm going to leave it there and put my attention on the rest of the sky, which is vast and clear and spacious and luminous and unstained, besides this little cloud. And that helped a lot, you know. Little thoughts are easier, I think, to work with and manage and let go, like a little bubble burst, thoughts of what you're going to do later in the day, or thoughts what you had for breakfast or something. But these powerful emotions that can come, which we talked about before, that they, I kind of look at emotions as made from the same material as thought, right? They come from the mind the same way. But these emotions sometimes are hard to work with, and hard not to follow, especially if you know what you're angry about. If it's something very specific that somebody did to you or something you're worried about, like I said, I'm not sure what I was angry at. I just noticed it came up. But, using that technique of going back to the spaciousness of the sky and going back to the breath, I did get past it, and it did kind of disappear on its own anyway. It just took a different angle of approach, if that makes sense. So basically what I'm saying is the value of this foundational practice of looking at the mind like the sky and dealing with thoughts and even emotions as these temporary clouds that come, and that if we put our awareness on it and are aware of our thinking and aware of our emotions, we can leave them where they are and go back to the clear, spacious, vast, luminous, limitless impartiality of our minds, natural mind, like the sky. Also wanted to talk a little bit today about, the three components to meditation, the three sections that I do. One is setting the motivation, two is the practice, three is the dedication, and why we do these things. Because in my tradition, you're not just meditating for yourself to feel better. You're meditating for all beings, for the benefit of all beings, ultimately. So if you become a better person, that has, through meditation, if you become more aware of your thoughts and emotions and can behave and act out of a more saner place, a more kinder place, that's going to have reverberations in the world, in your immediate circle, family, friends, community, and so on, And it's this type of practice cultivates spiritual qualities. So what do I mean by spiritual qualities? I don't mean holy, I don't mean religious. I mean, what do you consider spiritual qualities? Love, compassion, kindness, generosity, patience, equanimity, or fairness. To me, those are real spiritual qualities. When you meet somebody who's cultivated those things and has them in abundance, they're very palpable. You can feel it. And the opposite too. When somebody has very negative qualities, you can feel it. So with that in mind, let's do some sitting. Let's set our motivation. I always say this is optional, but I do it. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Quick review of the posture. So if you look, that's the way I am. You could be like this. You could be however's comfortable, cross-legged on the floor or in a chair. If, it's very difficult to sit on the floor, sit cross-legged. A chair is good, but your back should be straight and your feet should be flat on the ground. It helps both in a chair and on a cushion if your hips are even or even above your knees. So back should be straight, but not rigid, not forced into some attention, but just kind of relaxed. Hands can be relaxed, like on your knees. I do this, palm over the back of the hand, curved with the thumbs touching. I like that. Sometimes I'll go between this and that. Shoulders slightly back, but not like at attention, but just relaxed. Head and neck at a comfortable angle, slightly tilted downward. The mouth is open a little bit. No tension in the jaw, the tongue against the soft palate. The eyes, the gaze, important. In my tradition, we keep our eyes open. You can do whatever you like. But the gaze is not intensely staring at something, nor is it like out of focus, spacing out. It's kind of a relaxed, steady gaze. And you can use something that inspires you, a religious photograph or statuary or flower, view out the window, or nothing, the wall. When you get in this posture, we spoke about the guitar string. Too slack, no sound. Too tight, no sound. You want something with some tension but relaxed. That's the posture. then go to the breath. We're breathing in and out through our nose. And it's a relaxed breath. It's an easy breath. Not a deep and not a shallow. Focus on the point between the nose and the top lip. Think of the mind as the sky. Thoughts will come. Don't judge them. Don't push them away. Don't follow them. Just acknowledge them and leave them where they are. Go back to the breath. With all that in mind, I'm going to use a timer this time so I don't have to stare at it. Let's do 3 minutes of meditation. All right. Great. That was really good. Sometimes 3 minutes can seem like a long time, right? Remember, when you're doing the meditation, don't feel like you have to remain completely still. I mean, sure, you should settle into that comfort and be still. But if your body starts to feel particularly tense and uncomfortable, it's okay to adjust to a more, to relieve some of that tension. Sometimes it's just a matter of a tiny shift of posture or angle of your hips or something to relieve some tension, because it shouldn't just be about bearing pain. I don't find that, for me, particularly productive sometimes. If you're sitting for 3 minutes and it's all about, oh man, this hurts, I can't wait till it's over, that kind of works against you. So it might be better to relax. Like, yes, over the weekend when we were doing this retreat, in between actual sitting periods, I had to stretch my legs out in front of me, stand up, and because, my body's just not used to such long periods, and, age has things, has something to do with it as well. You notice that we went through our review very quickly. I have our first 2 sessions on video and Instagram that you can look and review stuff. I don't want to keep saying the same things over and over again, but in many ways, there's not much to say once you know the basics. It's really just about the practice. And the best thing to do is make it something, as regular as you can. If it can be daily or almost daily, make it into your routine. People ask what time of day is good. Morning is good because it's really before all the energy and thoughts of the daily stuff starts to kind of invade our mind. It's often our mind is quieter in the morning, and that can be a good time. But it could also be a good time to check in the middle of the day or at night when our minds are particularly busy, to calm the mind down and things like that. So I found it kind of productive to take some questions in the middle of our class rather than at the end. So now I can answer some questions if I can, and then we can take some of that into the next sitting part of the class. So I'm going to move to our Q&A section here, see if I can answer some questions. Mark from Spain says, I've been practicing twice a day since I first started this session, and I can't avoid picturing an actual image of an ocean in my mind, which is very relaxing and beautiful, but I don't think it counts as not thinking. Also, I often find myself narrating in my mind the course and flow of thoughts, which makes me feel great, but again, maybe not as powerful as it should be. I mean, you can use an ocean. Maybe the ocean's if you're getting caught up in the thought of the ocean and the narrative and the story of the ocean, maybe that's not as good as the sky, which is more tranquil. Like a completely blue sky is a very tranquil image, right? There's no motion to it. Whereas an ocean, you don't really think of an ocean as still per se. So maybe the ocean's not the best thing for you. You're saying it doesn't count as not thinking. Not thinking is not what we're going for, to use a double negative. It's really not the point. You may not think. That might not happen. We're working with our thoughts. We are working with our mind. That's what we're doing. You know what I mean? You can't not think. That's a negative, right? We have to work with these thoughts, so we start to create some space between thoughts, some space in our mind, and seeing how our mind works. Narrating the course and flow of thoughts is not such a good thing. That to me means you're following the thought. Like, okay, I have a meeting at 2:00. I have to wear my white shirt. I better make sure it's pressed. And that's following the train. So if I have the thought, I have a meeting at 2:00, oh, I'm thinking about my meeting. Back to the breath, back to the sky. That's more how we need to practice the meditation, not following the thoughts. Corinne says, when I meditate, my body starts to itch. Should I try to ignore it? Well, that kind of goes to what I was saying about adjusting the body. You know what? If you have an itch, I think it's okay to scratch it. I mean, if you get to the point where you're gonna, you're scratching more than you're, meditating, then I would think, look into dealing with it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you need to address it as a condition rather than just. But I think it's okay. People may disagree with me. This is what I've found that's valuable, rather than saying, oh, I'm itching. If all your thoughts start to focus on the itch, you may as well just scratch it and get rid of it and move on. Just like if there's like a cramp happening, and with a little bit of an adjustment of your legs or something, that cramp can be loosened. Better to do that than just to focus on the cramp. Let's see. Josh says, has meditation allowed you to see which people you need to remove from your life? That's a good question. I can't say if it's meditation that has allowed me to do that, has allowed me to see that. I think in some ways, by practicing meditation, looking at your mind, um, in some ways, it forces you to be more honest with yourself. I'll say that. Andre says, is it okay to move your eyes focus point? Andre is from Norway. Yes. Again, this goes back. It's very similar to the question of, and the thing about adjusting the body. Yeah, if you feel your eyes are too low an angle, which might not be good, it might make you fall asleep, or too high, that can be too tense. You can change your focal point, based as needed. If you find whatever focal point you're using is distracting you and creating more thought, it may be good to change. If you find the angle of it to be uncomfortable, that's okay. So yeah, we're trying to create an atmosphere of calm, of comfort, relaxation in the body, right? Alertness, but relaxed. And a similar atmosphere in the mind as well. Hi, Michael. This is from Jim. Do you find when you meditate as part of a group more beneficial than when doing it alone? I find that when you do it with a group, you feel a responsibility to either, like, look, here we are showing up as a group together, right? When any of us could have blown off meeting at this time and found something else to do. I have a responsibility because you're all relying on me to be here. That's one thing. I think there's something very powerful knowing that there's, a couple of hundred people all meditating, to try to deal with negative emotions and to try to become calmer people, more mindful people. I think that's very inspiring. I think meditating in a group can be inspiring. And I think inspiration is a good factor in meditation, like when we talked about setting up maybe a little area in your house where you're going to meditate, and there's something about that space, whether you put a cushion or a rug or a photograph or a flower, whatever it is, that space is inspiring, so it's going to motivate you to want to be in that space. Lila, again, another question, because she's asking some good questions. Is it a common thing for your breathing to get deeper as your meditation goes on? I find that. I found that just in the 3 minutes we just did. That I guess as your body's getting more relaxed and your mind's getting more focused, or on the spaciousness of mind, that yes, the breath does naturally get deeper. I don't think you should force that. I think it's better to naturally let it get deeper. Okay. With all that in mind, let us sit for 4 minutes. Um, remember, the breath is the anchor, right? By that I mean when you see you get caught up in the thought or feel the thought pulling you or the emotion, go back to the breath. Look at the breath as the anchor, even more than the image of the sky, and the breath is really what's going to ground you. Let's take some more questions, but I want to ask you a question. So respond to my question. How is it working with the thoughts with these techniques? How successful do you feel working with the thoughts? Are you able to go back and forth between letting the thought go, back to the breath, back to the image of the clear sky, touching the thought and letting it go? How successful do you feel? How successful do you feel in that, and how is that working for you? So Veronica says yes, but some days it's really hard. Some days I feel like I don't have to try as hard to go back to the breath. I get the same. I have the same issues. Um, and I don't know what that's about. You know, there's some mornings you sit down and I just feel like, whoa, it's like almost like effortless, just being in that peace and being in that spaciousness and not having a rush of thoughts. And then other days it's like an avalanche of thoughts. It's like a waterfall of thoughts, and really more and more difficult. And I guess that's life, you know. Um, that's a good observation. Lauren says, I find it easier to focus when I am exhaling. Is this true for most? I can focus back on the breath more during the exhale. Actually, last class, I don't know if I brought it up at the beginning of this class, but I think it's good to focus more on the exhale. When focus, I mean just a little more attention on the exhale than the inhale. There's something in the release of that, in the physicality of that I think can deepen your meditation and help a little bit. So that's a really good point to bring up, Lauren. Thank you. From Jason, about thoughts arising and noting them. Sometimes mine are little epiphanies or new ways of looking at things. Hard to shoo those ideas away. My instinct is to hold on to the thought. Good point, Jason. Well, what we're practicing is something called shamatha meditation, calm abiding meditation. And that's the technique we're learning. There's also something called vipassana meditation, which basically is like insight meditation and deals with penetrating ideas and working with like wisdom energies. And you may get little epiphanies. I'm not teaching that technique. I'm not qualified to teach that as well, although I have um, done that type of meditation, where there's certain concepts in Buddhism and ideas that I'm learning, and that through my meditation, I'll try to deepen my understanding of those things. You're getting maybe some insight automatically. If you feel that it is something that's offering you a new way to look at something, I would say then that's pretty good. Knowing the difference between what is a new way, a positive way of looking at things, and just the normal day-to-day chatter of your mind takes some discernment. That's where being honest with yourself can help. But I'd say if you feel that it is valuable insight, I would say maybe write it down. I would not, I don't think those thoughts need to be shooed away. It's more the mundane, the worldly, the reactive thoughts, that we have to unpleasant situations, or attachment to pleasurable situations. You know what I mean? Rather than some insight into some new way of looking at how you function in the world and how you interrelate to the world and to others. Lauren says, I find being patient with myself is the best way to balance getting back to the breath. Patience is a great quality. And yes, I think we all need to be patient with ourselves when we meditate, hoping for faster results or faster progress. We are where we're at, just by making a commitment to come to this class and to practice meditation. That's a big thing, and I started meditating 13 years ago. And in the beginning, I never thought I would be able to meditate. Honestly, I thought it'd be one of those things that I started and couldn't, like you ever join a gym and think you're going to go to the gym 5 times a week and get in this really great shape. And then like after a week, you stop going or whatever. I thought it would be like that, which I've done in the past. And I started off with very small sessions like we're doing. But I had to be really patient with myself and still do, I am always a beginner when I sit down on the cushion, every day. And like I said, some days I'm much more grounded and centered and calmer in my mind and in my body than others. And some days it's like I said yesterday when I was practicing, there was this anger, this huge chunk of it that just was in my mind, and I don't know why. And it wasn't so important to get to the bottom of why. I think it was irrelevant. I don't think it would have improved the situation. What was important was to stay with the practice and leave the anger where it was. And eventually it did go away. I didn't wake up with it today. I didn't go to bed with it either, although it stayed with me for a while. My very, very dear friend Liz Mariani says, in the past, I avoid pushing against hard, repetitive thoughts because they swing back like a pendulum. Yes. Pushing hard is, pushing against thoughts. That's a good thing to avoid. Just noticing them and letting them go, I think, is more practical and more productive. When we start to get, if we have to push hard against them, then we're engaging them and we're getting swept up in them. So that's a really good point. And they swing back like a pendulum, which means, you may push them away, but they come back harder. So negative thoughts come in, notice them, leave them where they are, go back to the breath, back to the sky. Those thoughts probably will dissipate. And if not, at least they're left in where they are, and we can move on from them. And they may come back. Your awareness may go back to them. We just apply the technique again. Zachary says, what has been the most important lesson through your practice? The most important lesson for me is to remember that I sit not for myself primarily, but for the benefit of all beings, which sounds like a very lofty, abstract thing, but it is actually very real. If this year taught us anything, it's how interconnected and interdependent we are as a species. Right? There was a virus that originated in one part of the world, and then very quickly the whole world was dealing with it. And in communities and in nations, we all had to change our behavior in order to deal with this disease, right? Deal with this virus as a group, as a unit, that's reality, right? Interdependence, interconnectedness is really a reality. No matter how much sometimes we don't want to believe that, don't want to deal with it. But I think that's one thing through my practice I've really learned. So if you're setting your intention on benefiting all beings, there's a truth in that. It's not just some lofty abstract goal, because interdependence is a truth. All right, we're going to do 1 minute meditation because we've been in the habit of kind of doing longer and longer, but we're going to do 1 minute. and just see how doing a very short period of meditation after learning techniques and working with certain techniques, just see what the quality of that is. Let's do 1 minute meditation starting now. That was quick. um, but I mean, for me, as soon as we started, I felt very grounded and in that space and in that calm and in that peaceful state of mind. So I think what I want you to think about is notice when you practice and you get into your posture and you focus on the breath and you imagine your mind like the sky, there's a place of clarity, of calm, of peace, full of potential like the sky, even though it's empty. That's always there. If we apply the method and technique, it's always there. The thoughts are not always there. The thoughts change. You know, what you're thinking about today, you probably didn't think about 5 years ago. The emotions of the day, you might not have had yesterday, and you might not have tomorrow. But that quality of calm, of peace, of clarity, of spaciousness, that is always there. That's what we have to keep in mind. That is really who we are, right? I last week I said in my tradition they talk about the mind being here. Think about that, whatever that means to you. They don't talk about the mind being here, they talk about the mind being here. So that place of peace and clarity and calm, that's like our baseline, really. And all these techniques and teachings, not just what we're doing, but I think in many traditions, is about connecting to that place. That's really who we are. I mean, and not to sound overtly religious or, spiritual or whatever, but listen, by trial and error, we're seeing that. I hope you're seeing it because I am. And I've gotten comments from you that you are seeing that when you do apply this technique, it's you're not creating that. That's there. You know what I mean? What you're doing is letting go of some of the obscurations to that, which are those temporary thoughts and temporary emotions and states of mind, like the clouds, which are temporary, and storms that are temporary. We're not creating this peace. We're kind of letting go of things that stand in the way. So what we're saying is ultimately that our basic state of mind and our basic nature of mind is calm, is peaceful, is clear, is spacious. Think about the mind. Everything you experience comes through the mind, right? Without mind, you're not experiencing anything. Think about the vastness of that. All right, we'll take a few more questions and then we'll do a final meditation and then we will call it a day. Lena says, I like to think of my mind like a puppy in training. I keep pulling it back to the breath. That's a good analogy. That's exactly what it is. And hopefully, most people are very kind to puppies and are patient with them, by being abusive and violent, you just perpetuate abuse and violence. Ethan says, I wonder if my ability or continuation to work around thoughts strengthens a muscle which may welcome them back in. I notice this during these classes as each sitting session welcome more thoughts in the laugh. I think what happens is once you start sitting and working with thoughts and becoming aware of the thoughts, you realize just how busy the mind is, because we haven't, until we do this, we've never done it. You know what I mean? Until we actually commit to meditating, we've gone our whole lives like this. In Buddhism, we've gone many lives like this before this current incarnation, as they say. But that's pretty much what the mind does. It goes from thought to thought to thought to thought. It's this constant train of thoughts that go. One leads to the next. So now we're kind of looking at it and seeing it do that. And it may be the first time we're ever aware of that, and it's daunting. There are many, many, many thoughts in a very short period of time. So part of that is becoming aware of that. But I do guarantee the more you do this and the more regular it becomes, the more you'll be able to sit in the spaciousness of mind and the clarity of mind and the calm of mind. It will. All right, I'm going to take one more question, then we're going to sit again. Liam says, I feel like some thoughts are sometimes harder to come away from than others. Some can be let go effortlessly. Others take me a bit longer to flow away from. I think that will become easier to deal with after more practice of these techniques. This is my first time today. Yes, exactly. Some thoughts are more loaded than others. Loaded, I mean, you have more attachment or more aversion to them, right? Some people really get you angry. Some people really make you happy. We don't react to all people the same way. You know that, right? Some people you don't react one way or the other. So the same with thoughts, you may feel gripped, gripped by a certain thought because of just your attachment to it. It's something that's bothering you, eating your mind. The only way to deal with them is apply the same technique. And we may have to just do more of the technique, go more back and forth, back to the breath, back to the sky, leaving it where it is. And then it comes back. Like I said yesterday, I had this anger that just, I couldn't get rid of it, but I was able to leave it where it is. Like I had an awareness of it, but it wasn't dominating everything. I was able to know it was there and go back to the spaciousness of the practice. Thank you for being here today. We are going to end with 5 minutes of meditation, and then we're going to say goodbye. It's 10 o'clock. going to dedicate by this merit, may all beings attain enlightenment and conquer the enemy of faults and delusion. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you. Hope to see you next week or next time or whatever. Keep meditating. All right. Take care.